excuse me. That's going to be right here. Okay, so that's Deuteronomy 8:12, right there. All right, this is again Moses talking to the Israelites, and this is lest you eat and shall be satisfied, and build lovely homes and shall dwell in them. Now again, I know I'm taking this out of context a little bit, but I've spoken about this extensively about when this is talking about Moses and the Israelites going into the promised land. They're going into the promised land, and what they're going to receive when they do get to that promised land. Okay, and part of that is lovely homes. So guess what? You have a lot of children. You now have a lot of homes. Guess what homes have? Land. Right? You don't have homes built in the middle of thin air. Right? Even if you have a houseboat and you're living on a houseboat or even an RV, you still have to put that somewhere. Right? You still have to put that somewhere. Sure, you could live on a boat and just fish and have all of your sustenance, and for whatever reason live on a boat for a long time without having to dock to shore to get supplies. You could do that. At the same time, most people, if you're going to have land ownership and the continuation of a nation and a country, you're going to need land. All right, and homes have land. So if you have a lot of children, so guess what? What are they going to do? Overtake the land. And that's great for your nation because it's the survival of your kind. Again, why is that important? Because you're a believer. You're a believer. On top of your blood nation, you also have a spiritual nation, which is God and Jesus. And so when you have more children, you're going to be able to promote that in a way that you otherwise would not. Because if you're two parents right now and you have one kid, guess what? That one kid is going to have a spouse with somebody else, right? Let's say their spouse also is an only child. So guess what? You had 4 in this generation right here. All right, just so you can see it a little clearer. So you have two right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in this nation. Each one of them had one child. So now you're down here. You have 2. Guess what? Now they have together, now they're spouses. Now they have one child way down here. So you started with 4. Now you're down to 2. Now you're down to 1. Well, guess what? Some other nation comes into your land and they have a couple and a couple. Each one of them have 4 kids. Now you have 8. Now that 8 can overcome your 2. So now your children are going to be living as, for all intent and purposes, servants to the other tribe that has 8. Think about that. That is wealth. That is wealth. And why you want the continuation of your kind. Because you want to have believers populate wherever you are. And the best way to do that is by raising them in a faith-based household, learning the Bible and studying it and living it and teaching them it. And that includes everything. It's not just for them to make it to heaven. It's not just for them to go to church. It's not just for them to get married. It's a lot more to it. Because again, if you want your children and your nation and your tribe and your kind to survive, you're going to have to do this. But again, this is not a chore. This is a blessing. Every single time the Lord talks about children for your life, again, not getting on a rabbit trail, but every single time he talks about children for your life, it's positive. It is a blessing. Okay? It is a blessing. All right? And again, a lot of that has to do with the blessing of you desiring to promote the Lord and populate the earth with believers. All right? So that's why. Okay? Again, that's the best thing. So what is it? So now that you do have the children and you understand that wealth is power, what's the best way to do that? To have them get this mindset of, okay, yes, I want to have an abundant life. Yes, we all do. We want to honor the Lord and love him with all of our heart and soul. Yes, we do. We want to obey his voice and all his commandments. Yes, we do. We do want to have all that. We want to live a life that the Lord would be proud that we are a representative of. That's 100% true. Okay? From a spiritual perspective, that's true. You also have a natural perspective, and this cannot be lost on you. We have a natural perspective that cannot be lost on you. What does that mean? Guess what? Homes are not spiritual tools. They are natural tools. They are physical tools. And guess what? Homes can equal land, and homes and land equal power. Wealth is power. How do I mean by that? Just think about this. I don't know why. Again, we're going to stay away from politics on this channel. But when it comes to historical facts in the political realm, I'm certainly going to talk about it when it comes to money. I want to say, let me just triple check this. All right. 1 second. Okay, what year was this? Yes. So I don't know why this came up, but when you think about the robber barons, do you remember that in school? The robber barons, and somehow these people that built all this wealth were just horrible people, right? The Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, and they were just terrible, horrible people because they built great businesses and built a lot of wealth. And for whatever reason, they're just evil because of this. For whatever reason, again, not getting into that right now. But the one thing I was looking at during that time period of the 1880s and 1890s and the Industrial Revolution, which was the greatest economic engine that America has ever seen, there was an election in 1896 for president. William McKinley versus William Jennings Bryan. Okay? Now, those two names may have nothing to do with you. And I couldn't tell you one thing about either one of those men other than the fact that William McKinley became president. Why? Because two people bankrolled his entire campaign. Rockefeller and Vanderbilt, I believe. All right? If you'll give me one quick second. Let's see here. Yes. So I'm just looking at my notes right here. In the election of 1896, John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan gave more money to William McKinley than all the donors from William Jennings Bryan's campaign combined. Let me say that again. Two people, John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan, gave more money to William McKinley than all of William Jennings Bryan's donors combined. And guess who won? The guy with the more money. Guess what? Wealth is power. Those two people were wealthier than most of the country. And guess what? That means wealth is power. And so guess who got elected? Their candidate. Same thing in today. I promise you. Same thing with today. It's the same thing. All right? With our political system. In 2016, all right, not going back because that was an election that surprised a lot of people. But what I looked at were the donors. Who donated to each of the parties? Were the rich people focused on these people, or were the rich focused on these people? And it comes like Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all that stuff. What I found out is that the top 20 donors in the 2016 cycle, meaning all the president, the Senate candidates, the congressional candidates, all of that, half were the Democrats, half were the Republicans. So guess what? What are they going to do? The Democrats are going to focus on benefiting their rich people, and the Republicans are going to focus on benefiting their rich people. Why do you think people get frustrated over and over and over again? Because what the donors want for their parties is very different from what the voters want for their parties. I don't care who you are. Okay? Guess why? Wealth is power. The people with the wealth and the people that contribute are significantly more likely to win, and significantly more likely to get what they want after they win. All right? So one more stat. What if I told you that 90% of all congressional races, I'm talking about the House of Representatives. What if I told you that 90% of the races for the House of Representatives, which is every 2 years, what if I told you that 90% of them were won by the person who spent the most money? 90%. Okay? It's about 85% for the Senate, but for the representatives, it's 90%. So it doesn't matter what you focus on when it comes to studying the issues, getting out the grassroots campaign, getting out whatever. All right, going around and being a great debater. There's none of that. The most important thing is not any of those. It's not even knowing the issues. It's not even knowing the qualifications to be a representative. It's not about how to vote. It's not about how to write a law. It's not how to read a bill. It's none of that. It's who spent the most money. 90% of the candidates that spent more money won. And that's been historically the case for decades. Whoever spent the most money won. And guess what? Their agenda, when they win, is the person that gets in. Okay? All right. Now, you can like that, you can not like that. But that's where we are right now. That's why this is so important, because wealth is power. Who is the one who's controlling the people? The wealthy. Do you want to become wealthy? Yes. Do you want your children to become wealthy? Yes. Who would you like to have power in your land? Who would you like to have power in your land? You or somebody else? Or a non-believer from another nation who just got here yesterday, who somehow brought a bunch of money with him and now is buying off your political candidates? Who do you want to have it? You or them? Make that choice. Not just for you, but for your kids. You have this great life. You have this phenomenal life in a great country. All right? Even if you don't like where this country has gone, you still live in a great country with a great nation. Who do you want to have the power? You or somebody else? That's why this is so important to focus on you and your children with wealth and money, okay? So how do we do that? Well, if I think about sort of the average person who talks about money to their kids, well, first of all, they very rarely talk about wealth at all because the parents that are doing the teaching don't really have the wealth. That's a problem. But watching this broadcast enough, that's going to change. That I can promise you, okay? So the first thing is everything comes from God. Everything we have comes from God. That's typically the first thing that most parents will teach their kids. Again, very important. Not putting it down. Very, very important. And just in case you're not sure about where that comes from, it's right here. 1 Chronicles 29. Nope, that's not it. It's right here. 1 Chronicles 29. Start at verse 14, the highlighted section. This is King David talking at the end of his life. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give so voluntarily as this, giving to build the temple of God in the promised land, okay? For all comes from you. There it is, right there. Read it out loud with me, all right? For all comes from you. Talking to God. For all comes from you. There you go. Everything we have comes from God. And we have given to you out of your hand. For we are sojourners and pilgrims before you, as were all our fathers. Our days on earth are as a shadow and without permanence. O Yahweh our Elohim, that's God our Father. All this store that we have prepared to build you a house for your set apart name is from your hand, and all is from you. There you go. There it is, crystal clear. Everything you have comes from God. And a lot of people teach that to their children so that they can be satisfied with everything they have. And be thankful for what they have, no matter what it is, because everything they have is a blessing from God. Everything, including money, including children, including houses, including jobs, including health, all that came from God. Because remember, God is the God that heals also. So again, this is not a divine healing broadcast, but again, all right, so if you have great health, that also came from the Lord. Okay, so that's the first thing that they do. And then again, the second thing is tithing. Very important. First 10% of everything that is grown on your economic garden comes from God. I personally differ when it comes to gifts. So if your grandma gave you $100 for Christmas, in my opinion, that is not tithed on based on the biblical Old Testament. Everything that was in the Old Testament, it talked about tithing, at least everything that I read and studied said everything that was grown on your garden, not your friend's garden who gave to you. Because if you had a dry crop, a dry land for a season, but your colleague did not, and they gave you food, that's not tithed on, okay? Because as that food was grown out of the land, that was food grown on your colleague's land, on your brother's land, on your countryman's land. That was tithed on already. So after it's given to you, it's no longer, it has to be tithed on because it already was. In my opinion, that's why gifts are not tithed on. All right. Now, again, if you do tithe, I'm not going to say don't do it. Under no circumstances will I ever say, very rarely will I ever tell you giving to the Lord, you shouldn't do it in certain circumstances. Very rarely, if ever, will you ever hear that come out of my mouth. Okay? Because very rarely can you go wrong giving to God. There are certain circumstances where you can and put yourself in a big hole, but that's a topic for another conversation when it comes to offerings, all that. But literally, you're not going to find any scripture in the very, very, very few scriptures will you ever see where somebody gave resources and wealth to God and they didn't get something back that wasn't a thank you note. They got some great blessing from the Lord. Okay, so again, tithing, that's again a lot of things that they teach their children. Very important, very important. It also says that everything came from God. We're just giving 10% back to Him. Okay, so that's another thing. Another thing is investing. Again, most parents are not doing this because most parents are not investors. They may have investments, but they don't really feel like talking about it or looking at it, and they're just hoping and praying everything works out great. That's not quite investing. Okay, so some parents are able to teach their children about investing, about growing their wealth, using their money to grow their wealth. All right. So that comes from, if you're looking for a scripture on that, I'll just show you a quick one right here. Ecclesiastes 11, verses 1 and 2. Send out your bread on the face of the waters, for after many days you shall find it. Give a portion to 7 and also 8. For you do not know what evil might be on the earth. Translation, remember, if you're in the Old Testament times and you wanted to invest, you did not go to the bank and open an investment account, put your silver in there, and go back to some antiquated screen and click a couple of buttons. Today we take for granted that literally you can move $1 billion with a few mouse clicks. $1 billion with a few mouse clicks. 50 years ago, that was basically impossible. That was basically impossible. Not that a lot of people had $1 billion 50 years ago, but just the technology even then was not existent. So imagine 500 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, which is roughly when this was written, all right? Which is roughly when King Solomon wrote this. So if you were an investor, what you had to do is you had to take some of your grain, if you wanted to do an investment, which is your bread, your grain, your money, and send it out over the seas. You had to. That's what that means, on the face of the waters. Okay? Send out your bread on the face of the waters. What that means is that you had to give it to somebody else who then went and used it on your behalf, got you a return, and then sent it back to you. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8. That means putting your investments in other places. Other places besides one basket. Don't throw it all in one basket. Okay? Again, not an investment broadcast. I'll get to that soon. But this is talking about how to build teachings with your children. So a lot of people will teach that, when you teach their kids, when you earn $10, the first dollar goes to God as the tithe. Another dollar will go to investments of some sort or savings of some sort. Another dollar will go to some other cause, and then 70% they live off of. That's typically, if you are going to teach kids about money, that's most of the time what you end up getting. Is that beyond everything coming from God, it's the first dollar goes to, out of every $10, the first dollar goes to God as a tithe. The second dollar goes to get saved. The third dollar goes to get invested, and then the rest is for you to live off of. And they don't even say enjoy it. They don't even say enjoy it. They just live off of. All right, so you could literally spend all of your money, all the remaining 70% on your basic living expenses, your car, your rent, your mortgage, whatever it is. All right. Now, again, that's better than a lot. I will say that if you just do what I said, you're still at the top of 90%. 90% of the people will never even learn that as a kid. I had two well-off parents financially as a kid. All right. Now, even then, I didn't get a ton of financial expertise or a ton of financial courses or teachings from them specifically. I saw what they did. All right. And again, not that they never really made poor decisions with their money, so to speak. But I did see how they spent their money, what they spent it on, all that stuff. So I did that. I did see that, and a lot of it was very beneficial to me. But I never really got sitting down of, hey, you know what? When you start earning your own money, this is what you should do with it. This, and this. Never got that whatsoever. And most people don't. But here's the problem. Even if you're better than 90%, they're still at the bottom, because the 10% are still at the top and they're still ruling you. That's a problem, because you want to be the ruler, not be ruled. Remember Deuteronomy 15:6. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall borrow from none. And you shall rule over many nations, and you shall borrow from, and none shall rule over you. Okay? That is a scripture that is a blessing of ours. All right? As grafted in seeds of Abraham, that's a blessing of ours. All right? Beyond just being debt-free, which is what we should be as children of God, it's also for us to rule. All right? And we can't rule if 10% of the country is better than us. We can't. We have to be at the top. All right. Now that doesn't mean go out and earn $1 billion, not necessarily. But if you can groom your children to do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to, guess what? Now you have 2, 3, 4, 5, however many people out in the world who have a money-focused mindset that, hey, you know what? I'm going to conquer. Being a Christian is not being run over. It's being a conqueror. It is being a conqueror. It means conquering your battles, conquering your giants. Those are spiritual giants. Those are physical giants. Okay? It's not just go in the prayer room, pray, and then everything will be just fine. And just go about your day and just do the bare minimum and just make it to the next prayer session. No, that's not how we're supposed to live. Remember, King David did pray multiple times a day. He was also a king. That means he fought battles. He led armies. He killed people. Right? Now, I'm not saying you go take out your sword and just go kill a bunch of people. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there are natural battles that you have to fight, that you have to be able to do that. So that's why this is so important that we not just know the spiritual laws, we also have the natural laws. And that's a lot of what wealth is, learning about natural laws combined with the spirit to be able to take you over the top and rise higher and higher and higher, and consistent increase in every area of your life. That includes financial, okay? So the best teaching that I can give on money and wealth for your kids is a board game that you've probably heard of but never really thought about in a deeper level, and that is Monopoly. That's right. We're going to talk for the rest of the session on Monopoly right here. Okay? Here it is. This is the old Monopoly game board. So you're going to start. I wish I had my pointer on here. Let me see if I can do that. No, I don't. I'm going to have to figure that out. Yeah, I can't. I should have messed it up. That's okay. All right, so here's your Monopoly game board. In the bottom right, let's see here. Yep, in the bottom right, you start on go, and you just move. You roll the dice, and you move forward. Okay. Every single one of these colored that you see right here. The first one is called Mediterranean. The second one is Community Chest. The third one is Baltic Avenue. All right. First and third, those are properties. Now you might not think, oh, well, I'll just give you paper money and I'll just get these tiny little house and everything will be fine. All right. And we'll just play this game and we'll hang it up and everything will be good. Well, guess what? There's a lot more you can learn as a kid doing this because this is fun. I will tell you this. Every time I played Monopoly, it was very, very fun. I don't care who I was playing with. It was fun to roll the dice. It was fun to be the boat or the car. It was fun to put the money in the middle. It was fun to get the properties. It was fun to get the little houses. It was fun. All right. So whenever you're teaching kids, the most important thing is we have to make it fun. It is. We have to make it fun. Even when we're teaching on money, a very serious topic, we can make it fun. And whoever did this is a genius. Whoever did this is an absolute genius. This game is just phenomenal. Okay. The first thing it teaches you about is acquiring property. Every one of those colors is a property. So if you look right at the bottom row, right there, you see that money chest on the bottom right. Each one of the properties to the right of that and to the left of that, they're a certain color, which I believe is like a light. In this, it's a light green. So it's a light green, let's just call it green for now. If you land on that, the price of that, I know it's a little blurry right here, but the price of both of those is $60. So if you pay $60, you now own that property. What does that mean? You now have wealth. You exchange your money and you got wealth. That's a very important concept, that we can use our money not just for enjoyment and abundance, but also for power. What does that mean? Because once you own that property, you now receive rent. If somebody lands on that property, no different than if you buy a house and somebody wants to land on it and rent it, you receive money. You receive money. Yes, that's a way for you to earn money by your money. I give you money, I give the bank money, I get a property, and now somebody rents it and gives me money. Somebody lands on it again, gives me more money. Somebody lands on it again, gives me more money. How is that beneficial? Because you are now building wealth. Wealth is power. That means a greater life for your kids than you had. That's why this is so important. Okay? Now, think about this. When you buy in the Monopoly, when you buy both of those green ones down on the right, Mediterranean and Baltic, now you receive more rent, which means if you buy all your properties in a neighborhood, you now have a nice neighborhood and you can jack up the rent more than you otherwise would when you own all the properties. That's important because if you build a nice neighborhood, people are going to want to live there, and nicer neighborhoods receive better rent. And when you have all the properties, you can control who lives there. You can do it. I mean, just think about this. If you have a neighborhood that has a subdivision of 20 homes and 19 of them are people who are great people, and now some bozo moves into number 20, what's going to happen to the value of those properties? They're going to go down. Why? Because nobody wants to live around the bozo. Nobody wants to live around the guy throwing parties at 4 a.m. Nobody wants to live around the guy who has no job. Nobody wants to live around the guy who smokes weed in the front lawn. They don't want to live around that. So what are they going to do? They're going to move or something like that, or just ignore them. But guess what? Now number 20 comes along and bozo moves out and a good guy moves in. Now the entire neighborhood is peaceful. Now the entire neighborhood is bliss. Guess what? More people want to live there. And if more people want to live there, guess what happens to the rent? Up, up, up. That's why this is so important. You may not have thought about that before, but that's the importance of this. And then you can have one house, 2 houses, 3 houses, and eventually hotels to build up that property to say, hey, I can put a nicer home on here than already exists. And guess what? Nicer homes mean more rent. Nicer homes mean more money. Nicer homes mean more power. Nicer homes mean a better life for me. Fantastic. Now your nation is being built up. Have you ever thought about that before? Seriously. Now, if you think about this, when you're 7 years old and you're in Sunday school, what did you learn about? Seriously. If you were 8 years old, 10 years old, what did you learn about? You learned about Jesus. That's very important. All right. Jesus is more important than any of this. All right. Jesus is the number one in your life. Always has been, always will be. Not putting that aside. But there are other things you have to learn as a believer beyond just Jesus. And Jesus died for my sins. And Jesus rose from the grave. There's so much more about Christianity that you need to learn. And that's why I'm doing this broadcast. So you can realize that there's so much better than you've been taught your entire life. From your parents, from your minister, from everybody else about your role as a believer in our society. And part of that is financial abundance. And that's what that's what I'm talking about right here. Because you need to be able to do this if you're going to be a believer and not just get run over and you're going to wake up one day and think, okay, why are the 10 churches in my neighborhood now becoming 10 mosques? And I'm wondering why that happened. Well, I'm telling you why that happened right here and to prevent it. That's what I'm telling you to do. All right. And property ownership is part of it. Okay. Whoever owns the wealth has the power. If Arabs move into your land and they buy up all the land, guess what? They have the power. Guess what? Go to Dearborn, Michigan. How did they do it? They moved in and bought the land and became a unified nation within that land, that Dearborn, Michigan land. Okay? In the past couple of months, they have had street celebrations to Hamas and the Palestinians. Now, not getting in the Israel-Palestinian fight here, not doing that. But just think about this. That's a foreign tribe celebrating a foreign tribe on U.S. soil. How did that happen? Wealth and property. They did it. Okay? They moved in and they got it. That's how they did it. And if you don't get this property mindset down, you're going to wake up and think, okay, why is everybody in my neighborhood speaking Italian? All right, not putting the Italians aside. I love the Italians. Promise me. Or a better example, why is everybody in my neighborhood speaking Swahili? Why does everybody in my neighborhood look so different and want to be so different? Well, I'm telling you how it happened. And this is why teaching you and your children about this right now is so vital. It is. If you want to improve on whatever land you're in, this has to be part of it. Property and land ownership. And we can teach this to our children in a very fun way. Because when you're 10 years old and 12 years old, you should be learning more about Christianity and your walk with a believer than just Jesus loves me. Okay? And, baby Jesus was in a manger. You should be learning a lot more about this. And part of that has to do with the financial abundance that you should and could be walking in as a believer, even at 10 years old. Even at 10 years old. All right? So that's why this is so important. All right? I cannot stress this enough. I cannot stress this enough. I promise you that. Okay? So, next, after property ownership, receiving rent, wealth, the next is paying taxes. You can see the fourth right there. It goes, if you look at the bottom right, it says go to the left. The first one is Mediterranean. The second is community chest. The third one is Baltic. The fourth one is income tax. Income tax. Yes, part of living in life is paying taxes. And we talked about that. We have a broadcast on it. Not getting into that here, but whatever country you live in, you're going to be paying taxes of some sort. Even the Israelites paid taxes. All right? So putting all that aside, all right, I'm not getting into that right now, but paying taxes is part of it. The last thing we want to talk about is the bank. Okay? Now think about this. I want to show you this really quick. I'm about to show you the instruction and rule book for Monopoly. I'm going to show you the instruction and rule book for Monopoly. This is straight from their word. This is not mine. This is not mine. This is the word. Okay? Look at this. This is from the rule book. And I'm going to zoom in so you can read this very clearly. The highlighted. Okay? The bank never goes broke. If the bank runs out of money, the banker may issue as much more as needed by writing on an ordinary paper. Let me say that again. The bank never goes broke. That means the bank can just print obscene amounts of money. So think about this. Who do you think is... Again, I promise you, I'm going to do a very deep broadcast, probably around election season, about this very topic. But it's not for now. Okay? So around October, November of next year, as I'm doing broadcasts, wherever that is, however that is, on whatever platform that is, I'm going to be talking about this significantly, about the bank and its role in our society. Okay? But think about this. The bank never goes broke. If the bank runs out of money, the banker may issue as much more as needed by writing on an ordinary paper. What do you think happens in our government whenever they run out of money and need more money? Print it. Guess what? Monopoly does the same. So if you teach your kids about that, why do you think prices keep going up? The banks. They print more money. Right? Inflation. Now, do I want to teach my 4-year-old about inflation? No. My 4-year-old just wants to eat ice cream and be happy. All right? But as I start getting older and start understanding a lot of things, this is also something that we can talk about. Why when they see old movies, if you watch this, here's the great debate every Christmas season. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes or no? I'm not going to get into that here. But every time we play it, because it does occur at Christmas time. It does. All right. Now, is it a focus on Jesus and the Christmas season? I don't know about that. You never know. All right. Maybe you do. I love the movie either way. But one of the things that I find very intriguing about that movie is that it does show gas prices. It does show gas prices. Okay. Because all of his movies, they were around when gas was 70, 60, 50 cents. All right. Now, maybe your kids don't really care about gas prices, but they do care about ice cream prices. When they go to Dairy Queen and they think, I want an ice cream. I want a Blizzard. That'll be $4. 30 years ago, you see a movie. I want a Blizzard. I want an ice cream. That'll be 50 cents. Huh? So you're telling me I could have gotten 8 ice creams back 30 years ago? Yes. Why? The bank. Bank never runs out of money. Print. As long as somebody's willing to take the bonds, guess what? The bank can print more money. Okay? And quite frankly, that's what they need to do. They don't really have an option. Why? And I'll end with this. This has nothing to do with kids and wealth and money. But just think about this for a second. Our government runs, I don't even know what our government's fiscal deficit is. I'm actually curious what that is. Federal deficit 2022. Let's see if we do that. The fiscal deficit for 2022 was 1.25. Let's see here. 1.375 trillion. 2023. Let's see here. There you go. So this right here, fiscal year 2023, is from October 2022 through September 2023. So that ended about 2-3 months ago. 1.7 trillion. All right? 1.7 trillion. Now you might think if we just cut spending by 1.7 trillion, we could have a surplus, which we would. All right? Now that would take an act of God to do that, but let's just say in theory it did happen. 1.7 trillion. We cover that deficit. Now we have a surplus, right? Now we can start paying down the debt, right? Wrong. Guess what? 30 years ago, somebody created a 30-year note by the government. That 30-year note matures this year in 2023. 20 years ago, in 2003, the federal government issued a 20-year note. Those 20-year notes matured in 2023. 10 years ago, in 2013, the government issued 10-year notes, which expire this year in 2023. If you look at all the previous notes that were from previous years that matured, meaning we now have to pay the principal back on what they lent us, that number is in the tens of trillions. It is. So in order for us to start paying down the debt, we would not only have to run a surplus, we would have to cover all the previous year's debts and their principals in the same year. And then we could pay off the debt. Then we could start paying down the debt. At this point, that's impossible. I mean, now again, with God, all things are possible. Not putting that aside, but in the realm of the country that we live in today, that would literally be the equivalent of getting struck by lightning 35 days in a row. That's what would have to happen for the government to start paying down its debt. So the reality is the bank can never run out of money. It can never run out of money, and it never will. They'll just print more of it whenever they need it. And guess what? You're going to continue paying more. And guess what? Kids are going to have to realize that at some point. Now, is that something you teach them at 5? I'm not sure about that. But by 15, they better know what inflation is, where it comes from, and why it happens. They should. And because at that point, they'll be so disgusted with it that they'll want to say, I'm not taking part in the system. I'm taking part in God's system. Because God told me I'm the lender and never the borrower. I'm the lender and never the borrower. I'm the one who's going to rule. I'm not going to be ruled. Because Deuteronomy 15:6 tells me that, right? It tells me I am the lender and I am the ruler. That is part of your Abrahamic blessing. And part of that requirement to be able to do that is property ownership and wealth acquisition. It has to be. That's why I love this Monopoly game. I really do. I love the Monopoly game. And so you should too. All right. But again, once your children get to a certain age, they need to learn more than just who wants to be the boat, who wants to be the dog, all right? Who wants to acquire all the blue properties? Everybody wants to fight over Park Place and Boardwalk, all right? Now, there's a reason why for that is because the rents are higher, but there's more to it than that. There really is. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today, and so why kids are so important, why my money versus wealth with their children is so important, and so that's what we're going to leave it with today. Hope you really enjoyed this broadcast. I really enjoy when I put the images on the screen. I know it's more enjoyable for you. I get the messages, so I just want to thank you again for watching this. We'll see you next time with more great content. Take care, everybody.